60 feet across, nearly 127 feet deep, close to 2 million gallons of cold black water. And it was built to end a war, not hold a lake. Most people picture abandoned Texas as sun-bleached wood and caved-in roofs, open sky, peeling paint, something you walk through with a flashlight and a reasonable chance of walking back out. What sits at the top of this list is underground, structurally sound, engineered to survive a nuclear strike. And the only way in is straight down, into cold, dark water that hasn't seen sunlight in 60 years. That's number one. We'll get there. Texas doesn't mothball its ruins. It forgets them in layers. A smelter neighborhood erased twice, once by law and once by dynamite. A whole town that went underwater in 1937 and comes back, briefly, when the drought gets bad enough. A bomber base that once held the plane that ended the war, now returned to rattlesnakes and cracked concrete. This channel covers what Texas looks like when the brochure runs out. If that's the version you want, subscribe now. We're here every week. Number 13, the Portland Cement Plant Ruins, San Antonio. There's a smokestack on the near north side of San Antonio that has been standing since 1889, 135 years. No factory around it, no machinery beneath it. Just brick climbing against the sky beside Brackenridge Park while families walk past on their way to the Japanese tea garden below. That's the part worth pausing on. The garden below was carved from the quarry that fed the plant. Same hole in the ground, different century. The Alamo, Portland, and Roman Cement Company fired up here around 1880, the first cement works of its kind west of the Mississippi. Blue-gray limestone quarried from the pit next door, ground and fired and shipped across a region that was still figuring out how to build permanent things. The Great Brick Smokestack went up in 1889, an anchor point, a skyline marker, proof that the operation was serious. When the quarry was worked out in the early 1900s, the equipment moved north and the plant went quiet. Kiln footings, boarded sheds, young trees already pushing through the roots of the old machinery. The abandoned pit stayed vacant long enough for the city to decide it was better used as a garden. In 1917, they landscaped it into the sunken Japanese tea garden. Terraced paths, lily ponds, ornamental stonework, all of it laid down inside the industrial cavity that once fed the kiln. Stand beside the leaning 1889 chimney today and look downslope. Families with strollers move through the same carved limestone that built the plant. Two entirely different uses of one hole in the ground, both still visible, neither one explaining the other. The surviving ruins sit on and around public parkland, fully legal to visit. No fence, no trespassing charge, no forbidden angle on it. The menace is atmospheric, not criminal. But walk up to that smokestack and look at what it is. A chimney with nothing left beneath it. A monument to the moment Texas learned to pour its own concrete. And then stroll down into the garden that replaced it. Texas learned to build here. Then it walked away and planted flowers over the evidence. Number 12, the ASARCO Smelter in Smeltertown, El Paso. On April 13th, 2013, roughly 300 pounds of dynamite brought down 2 smokestacks in under 30 seconds. One of them was 828 feet tall. It had been defining the El Paso skyline since 1910. For a century, it was the first thing you saw coming in from the west. Then 30 seconds of controlled demolition, and it was rubble on the ground, and the horizon was just sky. The ASARCO plant refined copper, lead, and zinc on the Rio Grande west of downtown El Paso, wedged between the river and the university, starting in 1910. A working-class neighborhood. Smeltertown, roughly 400 homes, grew up in its shadow, populated by workers and their families who lived with the emissions because the employment was real and the alternative was worse. That arrangement held until 1972, when dangerously high lead levels showed up in the blood of local children. The families were relocated. The neighborhood was physically erased, not closed, not repurposed, removed. The smelter itself kept running. It closed in 1999 and later settled one of the largest environmental bankruptcies in United States history. Picture this. You are driving the interstate through El Paso in 2012. That 828-foot stack is above you, bigger than anything around it. A fixed point in a skyline that organized itself around that chimney for generations. A year later, someone charges it with dynamite, and in less than half a minute it is gone. The skyline doesn't adjust. It just has an empty space where a century used to be. What survives now is a fenced site under environmental remediation. No public access, no dramatic ruin to walk through. Smeltertown persists only as slab foundations in the dirt and a hillside cemetery, graves of people who lived their whole lives in the shadow of that plant. The cemetery didn't move when the neighborhood did. They left the dead where they were. What the foundations and the grave markers make visible today isn't what collapsed. It's what was taken. They didn't just close this place. They erased it twice. Once in 1972, neighborhood by neighborhood, and once in 30 seconds flat. Number 11, Joyland, Lubbock. There is a particular quality to a dead amusement park that is different from any other kind of ruin. The infrastructure is still shaped like a fair. The ticket booths, the midway lanes, the concrete pads where the machines were bolted down. But the scale of the machinery is gone, and bright paint fades fast when no one repaints it. Joyland, inside Mackenzie Park in central Lubbock, has had that quality since 2023. It's recent enough that the shape of the place is still legible. That's almost worse. The park opened in 1973, family-run, and it ran for 50 straight seasons. An unbroken stretch of West Texas summers that made it a generational rite of passage. A wooden-framed roller coaster, towering carnival swings, the particular smell of a regional amusement park in July. If you grew up in the Lubbock orbit between the 1970s and 2022, Joyland was probably on the map of your childhood. It closed at the end of the 2022 season. A deal to sell it to new ownership collapsed in January 2023. The liquidation ran through 2023. Rides pulled from their footings, sold off to parks in other states and other countries. The wooden coaster went somewhere. The swings went somewhere. Bare steel mounts and empty concrete pads stayed behind, inside a city park that families still drive past on their way to other things. Someone who rode that wooden coaster as a kid in the 1980s can pull into Mackenzie Park today and see the layout of a fair with nothing in it. The midways still run in the right directions. The proportions are still there. But the machines that gave the proportions meaning are on other fairgrounds now, in other states, carrying other people's children around bends they don't recognize. 50 seasons of summer cut down in one January meeting. The grounds sit on city parkland, not open for wandering, not derelict enough yet to feel historic. Just hollow, in that specific way that recent loss feels hollower than old loss. Number 10, Nike missile site DF-01, north of Denton. 6 miles north of Denton off FM 2164, there are concrete structures weathering in the North Texas grass. Magazine blocks, control buildings, radar pads. The bones of a missile battery that went active in September 1960 and was deactivated in October 1968. 8 years. That's how long it took for the technology to make the installation obsolete. DF-01 was one of 4 Nike Hercules batteries that ringed Dallas-Fort Worth during the peak of the Cold War, each one positioned to knock Soviet bombers out of the sky before they reached the Metroplex. The companion site sat near Terrell, Alvarado, and Mineral Wells, a loose ring of vigilance around a civilian population that mostly never knew the batteries were there. Nike Hercules missiles could carry a nuclear warhead. The plan, if it came to that, was to detonate one in the sky above the suburbs to stop a bomber formation from reaching the city below. It never came to that. The threat shifted from bombers to ICBMs, and no surface-to-air battery could stop a ballistic missile. So DF-01 was switched off in October 1968, before the decade it was built in even ran out. The land split. Part went private. Part eventually went to the University of North Texas, which used the old launch ground for an observatory until that too closed in 2005. 2 closures on the same ground, 2 generations of abandonment. The magazine structures and radar pads are still there, concrete losing its argument with grass and rust, built for a war that never arrived, standing watch over a threat that had already moved on. The property is posted and off-limits, private and university controlled, so this is a site you study from the record rather than approach in person. 8 years on hair-trigger alert. Then 40-plus years of silence. The Cold War's most forgettable vigil, keeping watch over nothing, out in the North Texas grass. Number 9, Fort Travis, Bolivar Peninsula. Battery Kimball's 12-inch guns could throw a shell 17 miles out to sea. 17 miles. That's approximately the distance from downtown Houston to the airport. The guns at Fort Travis, on the western tip of the Bolivar Peninsula, were aimed at open water, pointed at the horizon against threats that might be coming in from the Gulf. That firepower is the frame for everything else about this place. Fort Travis was established in 1898, at the end of the Spanish-American War, to guard the channel between Galveston Island and the peninsula. Battery Davis and Battery Ernst went up in 1898 and 1899 with disappearing rifles. Gun mechanisms engineered to rise above the parapet, fire, and drop below the concrete before an enemy could sight them. Battery Kimball, added later, mounted those 12-inch rifles. In World War II, as many as 2,500 soldiers were stationed here, scanning the Gulf of Mexico for German U-boats working the tanker lanes that fed the Allied war effort. Walk Battery Kimball today, and you step into poured concrete chambers that have held against more than a century of Gulf hurricanes. Dark stairwells, flooded floors, salt smell thick in the enclosed air, and those walls were designed to position guns aimed at enemy warships. The scale of the construction is not subtle. These are not earthworks or timber fortifications. They are massive concrete structures built to last. The fort was sold to Galveston County in 1973 and is now Fort Travis Seashore Park, a 70-acre public site where the bunkers are legal to enter. The danger is dark stairwells and standing water, not trespassing. That's the catch, and also the appeal. You can legally walk into a coastal gun battery that held 2,500 soldiers during the Second World War, stand in the chambers where those guns were mounted, and look out through apertures aimed at open water. It guarded the Gulf for half a century. Never fired a shot in anger at an enemy. Now there are picnic tables outside and machine gun slits in the wall behind them. Still ahead, a place that held more than 400 million pounds of explosive. And now the swamp is reclaiming it one root at a time. Number 8, the Longhorn Army Ammunition Plant, Karnack. From 1942 to the last day of the war in August 1945, the Longhorn Army Ammunition Plant beside Caddo Lake in deep East Texas produced more than 414 million pounds of TNT. That figure takes a moment to land properly. 414 million pounds. Enough explosive to level a city. Produced in a single facility on the East Texas swampland, shipped out to fuel a war. The plant was essentially a self-contained city. 451 buildings, its own rail lines, its own power generation, its own water. Workers lived in and around it, and the whole operation ran continuously through the war years. Longhorn didn't go quiet in 1945. It made incendiaries, then Pershing rocket motors, and stayed active through the Cold War. In the late 1980s, it hosted the first physical destruction of missiles under the U.S. Soviet INF Treaty. Warheads built to end civilization being systematically dismantled on the same ground where wartime explosives were made. Production ended in 1997. In 2009, the land became the Caddo Lake National Wildlife Refuge. The transition is visible in the landscape. Igloo-shaped munitions, bunkers, half swallowed by cypress root systems and swamp water, sitting inside a wildlife refuge that the state now manages for migratory birds. The East Texas swamp is patient. It doesn't need a demolition crew. It just sends in roots and water and time, and the buildings that held enough explosive to level whole cities are going down slowly, quietly, a few inches per decade. Much of the refuge is open to foot traffic, though portions remain fenced and restricted where contamination cleanup is still ongoing. Part sanctuary, part hazard zone, the distinction between the two not always obvious from the trail. They made enough TNT here to change the outcome of a world war. Now the cypress trees are settling that debt one root at a time. Number 7, Travis State School, Austin. The flat grave markers on the south side of the Travis State School grounds in East Austin are not props. That point needs to be made plainly before anything else. The cemetery is a real cemetery, and the people buried there lived their whole lives inside that fence line. They are not atmosphere. They are not a backdrop for photographs. The school was built in 1933, a self-contained colony for boys and men with developmental disabilities, designed to house the overflow from other overcrowded Texas institutions. At its peak, roughly 1,500 people lived here, working the cannery, tending gardens, using the swimming pool, existing within a boundary drawn by the state. Not everyone who arrived left. The cemetery on the south grounds is evidence of that. Many of those buried there had no one on the outside waiting. After a 1987 legal settlement pushed Texas towards smaller community placements rather than large residential institutions, the school began winding down. It closed in the late 1990s. What it left behind: peeling dormitories, empty wards, the physical structure of a world that held 1,500 people behind one fence line and then emptied out. The campus has posted no trespassing and is a known target for illegal urban exploration. Entering is a crime. That's the direct consequence of the catch, and it matters more here than anywhere else on this list. A place that held that many people, that many lives, that many deaths. A place with a working cemetery on its grounds. Is not the same category of ruin as an abandoned factory or a shuttered theme park. The peeling dormitories behind the fence were someone's entire world. The markers in the grass are where some of those people still are. This isn't urban exploration. It's someone's grave. Keep watching. 6 places left, and one of them is a Texas amusement park that wasn't just closed. It was demolished, hauled away, and replaced with a parking field. The pedestrian bridge is still there. It goes nowhere. Number 6, Central Unit Prison, Sugar Land. The state of Texas held inmates on this ground from 1909 until 2011. That's 102 years. When the Central Unit closed that year, it became the first Texas prison ever shut without a replacement being built. A budget crisis decision, a cost-cutting move that ended more than a century of continuous incarceration on this flat sugarcane land southwest of Houston. It was also, for a stretch in the early 20th century, the place where Huddy Ledbetter, Lead Belly, served time. The connection between Lead Belly, these Sugarland prison farms, and the folk song Midnight Special is part of American music history, even if the exact spot where he composed remains traditional lore rather than documented fact. The song is about a train whose headlights shone through the prison bars and the convict belief that if the light touched you, you'd go free. The Central Unit sat along a rail corridor. The trains still run that line. Picture this. You are standing on ground where inmates worked fields for over a century. A man who became one of the most influential folk musicians in American history walked this land, and out of that confinement came a song that has been recorded hundreds of times and is still being played. The prison is gone. The song is not. The exact coordinates of its origin are lore, not surveyed coordinates, which means the whole site holds the claim, not any particular corner of it. The city of Sugarland purchased the grounds in 2016, and the property is slated for redevelopment. Sugarland police actively arrest trespassers. The land where Lead Belly's song came from is now a development project in one of Houston's most prosperous suburbs, and that is its own kind of erasure. Quieter than dynamite, slower than water, but just as complete. The prison is gone. The song is forever. Texas doesn't always preserve the container just because the thing inside it was worth keeping. Number 5, Bluffton, under Lake Buchanan. In 2009, during a drought severe enough to pull Lake Buchanan far below its normal level, ruins climbed back out of the water. Hotel foundations, the metal scales of a cotton gin, the concrete slabs of a Texaco station that had doubled as the town's general store. Bluffton had been underwater since 1937, and for about a week, the drought was bad enough that it wasn't anymore. The town started as a mid-1800s stagecoach stop, grew into a small community of roughly 50 families, and was purchased out by the Lower Colorado River Authority as the Buchanan Dam project moved forward. Families sold their properties, moved their houses to higher ground, and relocated even their dead from the local cemetery to new burial sites. The dam was completed in 1937, the reservoir rose, and Bluffton went under about 30 feet of water. Not burned, not bulldozed, submerged. Still there, just not accessible. What the 2009 drought revealed was that the town had been preserved by the lake rather than destroyed by it. State archaeologists moved in quickly to document the foundations of a 2-story hotel, the cotton gin scales, the Texaco station slabs. Then the rains came back and the lake rose and Bluffton went under again. That's its cycle now. Buried until the drought gets bad enough to find it, then submerged again when the water returns. The site is reachable mainly by boat, sits on water authority land, and the emerged ruins are classified as protected archaeology. Not a souvenir field, not a photography set. The catch is also the nature of it. Bluffton doesn't exist on a fixed schedule. It comes back when conditions allow. Every drought reveals what 1937 tried to put away for good, and then the lake takes it back. The town has its own tides now, tied to rainfall. If the story of Bluffton is making you rethink the number of Texas places sitting quietly underwater, that video is already in the pipeline. Subscribe now, and you won't miss it when it drops. Number 4, the Astroworld site, Houston. The pedestrian bridge over the freeway is still there. That's the relic. A bridge that once carried tens of thousands of people across Loop 610 from the parking lot to the entrance of Six Flags Astroworld. still spanning the freeway, still pointing toward where the gates used to be. And on the other side of it is a flat grass field used for overflow parking during the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. The park opened in 1968 and ran for nearly 40 years, a fixture of Texas childhood. The wooden Texas Cyclone, a skyline of steel coasters, the particular scale of a major regional amusement park that has been operating long enough to mean something to multiple generations of the same families. On September 12, 2005, Six Flags announced closure, citing falling attendance and parking constraints. The final operating day was October 30th, 2005. By the first half of 2006, the park had been demolished. Not mothballed, not sold to a new operator. Demolished, cleared, the rides and structures removed, and the ground returned to grass. What remains is the bridge and the absence. That gap between what a place was and what stands in its place now is the entire content of this site. Someone who brought their children to Astroworld in the 1990s can cross that surviving bridge today, stand at the end of it where the entrance plaza would have been, and look at a parking field. There is no interpretive sign, no outline of where the rides stood, no marker explaining what this was, just grass and the bridge going nowhere. There is essentially nothing to explore in the conventional sense. Rides, buildings, midways all gone. What draws people is the eerie geometry of an empty field that has the wrong shape for a parking lot, the way the bridge is positioned wrong for a place that's only ever been a field, the presence that absence leaves behind. They didn't abandon Astroworld. They erased it, efficiently and completely. And the only proof it existed is a bridge that still points toward where the entrance used to be. Number 3, Hot Wells, San Antonio. Charlie Chaplin soaked here. Cecil B. DeMille soaked here. Theodore Roosevelt soaked here. By the early 1900s, the Hot Wells Hotel and Bathhouse on the south side of San Antonio was genuinely glamorous in a way that the Texas Hill Country didn't typically produce. A resort destination reached by electric streetcar, fed by a well drilled in the 1890s that tapped hot sulfur water below the riverbank. Otto Kohler's Hotel opened by 1901, and the Bathhouse drew the kind of clientele that Texas promoters spent decades trying to attract. Then the stagecoach road to relevance closed. Prohibition cut into the resort business. The First World War shifted leisure priorities. The Hot Wells Hotel closed in 1923. What followed reads almost like a pattern. The hotel burned in 1925. The bathhouse burned in 1988. It burned again in 1997. By the time the fire was done with the place, all that remained were the skeletal brick arches of the bathhouse, roofless and scorched, open to the sky above the same ground where a president once chose to spend his leisure time. The hot sulfur smell is still there. The water is still rising through the ground below the ruins. A visitor standing inside those open vaulted arches today is in the same physical space that Hollywood figures and a sitting U.S. president moved through. Just without the roof, without the fixtures, without anything except the brick walls and the faint chemical smell of the water that made the place worth building in the first place. The catch is a good one. After decades of neglect, the ruins were stabilized and reopened in April 2019 as Hot Wells of Bexar County, a free public park. The fenced ruins are legal to view. Entering the structures themselves is not permitted. But the forbidden feeling persists, even though the trespass doesn't, which is its own achievement for a ruin that burned 3 separate times. It burned 3 times, and Roosevelt still got here first. You can visit what's left. You just can't go inside it. Number 2, the Peyote Rattlesnake Bomber Base, Ward County. Within 4 months of opening in 1942, it had become the largest bomber training installation in the country. That timeline matters. 4 months, and Peyote had already outgrown every other facility of its kind. By October 1944, the population had peaked above 6,500 on a hardpan airfield in Ward County near the tiny town of Peyote, as far west in Texas as it is possible to get and still be in Texas. The Western Diamondbacks were there before the construction crews, and they stayed through the war. So many of them during the clearing operations that the crews named the base after the snakes. The rattlesnake problem was solved the way military construction solves problems, by pouring enough concrete over enough ground. 8,400-foot runways. Hangars large enough to hold B-17S and B-29S. Training crews on both types, feeding the Allied bombing campaign in both Europe and the Pacific. After VJ Day, the base became a storage yard for roughly 2,000 surplus warplanes baking in the West Texas sun, waiting to be assigned, salvaged, or sold. Among them, for a period, was the Enola Gay. The B-29 that dropped the first atomic bomb over Hiroshima. The plane that ended the war, parked in a field of 2,000 aircraft in Ward County, getting coated in caliche dust while the military figured out what to do with it. Walk the cracked runway slabs at Peyote today, and you were standing on 8,400 feet of concrete that once held the Enola Gay. The great hangars are gone. The base closed in 1963 and almost nothing stands. The ruins are remote, the land largely private ranch land, and the artifacts worth preserving have been moved off-site to the Rattlesnake Bomber Base Museum in nearby Monahans. What remains at the site itself is the geometry. Concrete in the right pattern for runways, foundations in the right spacing for a base that once trained the men who ended a world war. The plane that carried the first atomic bomb sat here in the desert, forgotten in a field of 2,000 aircraft, baking in the Ward County sun. The Rattlesnakes have had the place back for 60 years now. The runways that held that plane are still there, cracked and slow, losing the argument to the hardpan, one season at a time. Number 1, the flooded Atlas missile silo, outside Abilene. This is the only place on this list that requires a dive certification to reach the bottom. The silo was built in 1962, one of a ring of Atlas F launch complexes positioned around Dyess Air Force Base outside Abilene. Its purpose was specific: survive a nuclear near-miss and fire a 75-foot intercontinental ballistic missile at the Soviet Union. The engineering that went into that purpose is what makes the structure what it is now. Walls 4 feet thick. A shaft 60 feet across, dropping to 127 feet below the surface. Built to take a hit. Built to stay intact. Built to last through conditions that were not supposed to leave anything else intact. The Atlas program was obsolete almost as soon as it was operational. Better missiles, better delivery systems, faster technology. The silo was decommissioned within a few years of activation, left empty, sealed. Then groundwater began finding its way through those 4-foot walls, which tells you something about the patience of groundwater. Slowly, year by year, the shaft filled. Close to 2 million gallons of cold, clear, black water, sitting in a concrete cylinder that was never designed to hold a lake. Private owners purchased it in 2000 and recognized what they had: one of the most unusual dive sites in the world, and one of the most genuinely dangerous. A certified diver descending into that silo moves past old steel and the remnants of launch equipment into water that hasn't seen sunlight in 60 years. The visibility is clear. The darkness is total. The overhead environment absolute. This is not a ruin you walk through with a flashlight. It is a ruin you swim down into. Inside a concrete cylinder that was engineered to outlast a nuclear war, in water that is cold and enclosed, and has no surface visible once you are deep enough. The deep, enclosed, overhead environment is a technical dive. The owners manage it as one. Access is strictly by appointment, for trained divers only, and the hazard is not hypothetical. The other 12 places on this list are abandoned in the conventional sense: closed, cleared, decayed, or submerged. This one is different. It was built to survive the end of the world, and it did. And then the world filled it with water, and now you need specialized training and an appointment to reach the bottom of it. 2 million gallons of cold black water in a 4-foot thick concrete shell, sitting under the West Texas plain, waiting. From a 135-year-old chimney with no factory beneath it to a missile silo with no sky above it. Texas doesn't demolish its ruins, it just stops explaining them. Which one of these would you actually visit? And which one do you think Texas should restore before it's gone completely? Put your answer below. The comments on these questions are always worth reading. If 13 abandoned places feel like Texas hiding something, the next video covers what it's hiding underwater. Flooded ghost towns, drowned bridges, and a courthouse that only surfaces when the drought gets bad enough. That one is queued up on screen now. If this list earned your time, like it and subscribe. Texas has more to show, and we're not done showing it.